Welcome to this edition of Art Bites. I'm super excited today because, as you know, I have the beautiful, incredible Jennifer Armstrong Hicks here with us, who's going to be
Nice
walking
to hear.
who's going to be walking us through a Valentine themed treat that I think we're all going to love. And before we jump into the recipe really quickly, I just want to do a quick check-in. So, Jennifer, how are you doing?
Doing great. It's been a busy week. We've had a lot of fun with my daughter's a Girl Scout. We've been doing lots of work with Girl Scout cookies. So it's been kind of cookie crazy right now, but it's a fun one. But I'm glad to shift gears into hot chocolate. We just had snow, so hot cocoa bombs are like the perfect thing for us to do this week.
Well, I can't wait to jump into that. And before we break down this new craze and give our viewers something that they can create or recreate at their own homes, let's touch quickly on the art piece first and then delve into the chocolate.
Yeah. Oh, I love this piece. So this is a Chinese lacquerware box. And what I like about it, it's called peach shaped precious spring longevity covered box. That's a long name, but but it's really cool because peaches are revered and special in Chinese culture. But obviously, the peach shape looks very much like a heart shape. So when I saw the piece a while back, I was looking at it and I was like, oh, that one's really cool. Maybe I could figure out something to do with it. And because it's red, it kind of speaks to hearts. And obviously, Valentine's Day came to mind, and I was like, okay, this could be really cool. So I started thinking about what we could do and boxes and that sort of thing. And I was like, oh yeah, hot chocolate bombs, which are a big deal right now. So yeah, so we'll talk about that. But the piece itself is so gorgeous, and one of the things that's really special about the piece that won't necessarily translate exactly into what we do, but it's all the carving and kind of the depth of the carving because it is wood. So you see some of the brown come through, but then it's also very red. When I guess the lacquer itself maybe was tinted red. So it has this kind of two-tone quality to it that I really love. There are some things you could do with what we're doing to kind of make it look a little bit more like that. It might take a tiny bit more skill or a little bit more patience, but it's doable. We're not going to get into that quite level of detail, but we're going to make it a fun thing to do.
I love it. So now that we've sort of broken down the art piece, let's jump into the food, my favorite part. Well, I love it all. I love art and food. The food is art. So let's jump into the part we get to actually consume and digest. So I'm ready to pass it over and we can start with the recipe.
Cool. Okay, so the recipe that we're going to do is actually an orange and Chinese five spice hot cocoa bomb. So you can, if you're not into Chinese five spice, or if you've never tried it, you should definitely try it. But if you try it and it's not quite your taste, you can certainly omit the ingredients that kind of push it into that realm. But I think with the context of the piece, I think it's a really cool combination, and it's a really like unusual way to try something like that. So if you are trying to impress someone with your art knowledge and your culinary knowledge, then combining the two is really like a one-two punch. So I definitely recommend that. But again, if you're more of a hot cocoa traditionalist, you can skip that part. But that said, we're going to do it that way. Something else to note is if you don't want to go through the process of actually making the hot cocoa component, you can use like hot cocoa that you buy at the store already pre-made in the bombs that we're going to do. So if you just want to like skip that step and use something store bought, you can definitely do that. So that makes it like kind of one level easier. We are going to do that extra step though. So we'll have fun with that. So we're going to start. So I've already measured out some of the ingredients. The recipe consists of a non-fat dry milk powder. I don't know if you can see that very well. It's just powdered milk. That's a very standard kind of thing. You can get it at any store. We have some powdered sugar. We have the cocoa powder. And then we have a little bit of granulated sugar, and this is like a pure cane sugar. That's why it's like a little bit different, not super white, but you could just use regular granulated sugar. There's a little bit of sea salt in here, and then the 5-spice powder. So the 5-spice powder, it was intended to be a combination of spices that addresses the kind of 5-spice profiles or 5 flavor profiles. So you've got sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami. Or there are lots of ways that people describe it, but it's supposed to be this kind of like range of flavors. So you're supposed to get everything in one spice. So what it contains, usually there are a couple little variations, but it contains star anise, cloves, Chinese cinnamon, Szechuan pepper if you can find it, and fennel. But a lot of times the Szechuan pepper is a little less available, so sometimes it has ginger in it, which again, kind of fits that Asian profile. Sometimes it has cardamom in it, which is really great. And if you were making your own and wanted to put cardamom in this, it would be great with the orange. I think that's a really beautiful combination. And cardamom has a little bit of that peppery flavor. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people use nutmeg or turmeric. So there are lots of ways to do it, but you can also just buy straight up Chinese spice. That's what that is. Easy peasy. So you take these materials. So these just get sifted together. And the reason that you want to sift them is because cocoa powder, you can kind of see as I put it in there, it really is a little clumpy. Like it naturally has this kind of, I don't know if I guess it's a moisture kind of from the cocoa butter that's in it. So it helps to sift it to make sure everything is really well mixed together. So I'm just going to do a little bit. I have some made off to the side, and this is really loud. But you can see it pretty quickly. I might be able to do it.
That's a really cool contraption for someone who is not in the kitchen often. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't even know there was a such thing as a sifter that has that sifts it for you. I'm so old school. I have just all I think is a regular sifting net,
which you could absolutely use, like any strainer or there's something called a tammy that's just like a big. A lot of times they're used in Asian cooking. It's like a bamboo edge and then just mesh on the bottom, and you just kind of pat it. This one, I have mixed feelings. I actually prefer a tammy, but this one, since it was such a small amount, I thought I would run it through this thing. So once you get it together, you can see that everything is pretty well mixed, and you just get this great powder. And you can make this and just store it and use anytime. It's the same sort of thing that you get at the store. But you can also kind of improve the quality of the ingredients if you like. So you can have some special stuff in there. So that is our mixture. The next part that's really fun is working on the molds. So what we're trying to make are these. This is the kind of mold. It's a silicone mold, so it's very flexible. It's like bendy, And what we're doing is we are going to make a layer of this candy melt in here. You could certainly use chocolate if you don't mind. If you want it to be just straight chocolate and a little bit more pure, then you can do that. But with the candy melts, you can choose lots of fun different colors. And for this, we wanted to have red. So we wanted to try the candy melt. These taste pretty good. They're from, I think I got them at Michael's. So this is what they look like when you get them. They're like little discs. So you can kind of see it's just like little flat discs. And you just melt them in the microwave. It's very easy. With real chocolate, like dark chocolate that you might like to use, you can do a very similar thing, but to really get the chocolate to act properly, you need to temper it, which is a series of heating and melting and then cooling back down to a very specific temperature. And that way, like chocolate that you get, like a really nice chocolate bar that you get is really shiny and it has a lot of snap to it. That's what you get when you temper chocolate. If you don't, sometimes it has something called fat bloom, where it has. I love that word, that term, fat bloom. It sounds like beautiful and terrifying at the same time. But it's where the cocoa butter that's in the chocolate kind of it doesn't recrystallize properly and it floats to the surface and it makes this like little white kind of dusty thing. Nothing's wrong with that, except it just doesn't look and it doesn't have the snap in the same way. So it's still edible. It doesn't change the quality of the food, but you really, if you want to use real chocolate, you need to temper it. This you do not have to temper, so it's a lot easier. And again, color. So what we're trying to get is something like this. And it has, it's just got a little cavity in it. And the best way to do it is to do 2, maybe 3 coats and not try to do it all at one time. I just use a brush, a pastry brush to do it. So this is the melted stuff. The instructions are on the package, so you don't have to kind of wing it. You can pretty much follow the directions. Let me get a new one. So I use a pastry brush. You can use a spoon if you're really careful. It helps to have a pastry brush. They're pretty cheap. You can get them at the grocery store. So you just dip that down in the chocolate and you put on kind of a thin coat across the pan. And it's okay if a little bit gets out onto the top edge. You do want to coat all the surfaces, but you don't want it to be too thick because it can just kind of it can pool in certain areas, and you don't want that when you're trying to melt it as a cocoa bomb. So what I'm going to do is we're going to let that set, but I'm going to go ahead and pop out the ones that I've already made. So I made a few in advance so we could see how they look. And hopefully I coated them enough. So I'm going to tilt you down again. One thing to note about taking them out of the silicone molds, and by the way, the silicone molds you can probably find them now at somewhere local like Michael's. I don't know about Target, but probably Michael's, maybe somewhere else similar to that. But you can definitely order them online. Amazon has all different shapes, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people use spears. So you can definitely get them in different shapes. So the important thing with this is to push from underneath. Like you don't want to try and pull it out or scrape it out. You want to pop it out. So what I'm going to do is kind of get under this and just push away the bottom. So I haven't even touched it until then. So that's what you get when it pops out. So pretty. Yeah, they're really, really cool. And it's okay. You may notice there's like a little bit of ragged edge around the side. That's fine. That's not a big deal. You can fix that in a couple of ways that I'll show you. I'm going to pop out a couple more. It's really satisfying to take them out of the container. Out of the silicone, because it's just fun to see how they look, and they pop out really easily. Not much struggle there, so that's cool. And then there we go. So we have 4 of those, which you need 4 to make 2 bombs. So this whole tray would make 4 bombs total. So I'm going to set this to the side. And you could do a saute pan, or this is just a pie tin. But it's in order to seal the 2 halves together, it's helpful to have something that's warm that you can just barely melt the edge, and you just essentially like glue it together with itself. So what we're going to do is just let that heat up for a second, and then we'll go ahead and put the hot chocolate and some marshmallows in there. So the marshmallows, I have 2 different kinds. So I have this kind, which is like dehydrated marshmallows, and then like regular poofy marshmallows. So both of them have their kind of good qualities. I think that the dehydrated ones melt a little bit slower, but they're also smaller. So it's kind of 6 in one, half dozen in the other, kind of situation. So you can use whatever you have access to. Again, you can get those little bitty dehydrated ones online on Amazon. It's really fun. If you like stuff like Lucky Charms, then you'll really like that. That's exactly what these marshmallows taste like. And it's really fun to get a 1-pound bag of marshmallows that are that little in the mail. You're like, I don't know what I'm going to do with all of these, but I'll find a way.
Yeah.
So we're going to have that. We'll use our dry mix that we made and the shell. The dry mix and the marshmallows, and I'll do one with each. And then we've got our little shells. So you can just set those there. I think you kind of have to gauge the size of your vessel. So this one will take generally about 1 and maybe a half tablespoons of the mix comfortably. And that's about what you need for a cup anyway. But if you're making like a big, like a larger sphere or something like that, you may want to increase the amount that you put in and then say that it makes more than 1 cup. This makes a single individual cup. Mm-hmm. So we put a little bit of the mixture in there, and I'm just going to do this over here because if they fall in, it's okay. The marshmallows can go right on top, and you kind of have to mound them in the middle a little bit. I definitely think that the soft ones tend to kind of mound up a little bit better for some reason, but you want to be sure that your edges are fairly clear so that the top will get glued on. And we'll do one other one, and we'll put the big marshmallows in. Just a little bit extra there. It pretty much fills the cavity, which is great. You don't want to put too many marshmallows in so that you can't get the lid on. You definitely have to make sure that they kind of sit in there properly. So I'm going to make sure that edge is fairly clear. All right, there you go. So now this pan is a little bit warm from having been on the stove, just a little bit. So when you put it on there, you can start to see how it's melting a little bit on there. So you just melt it a little tiny bit. And then grab the other one and you just kind of nestle it on top. And you try to line it up as best you can.
Nice.
Like that. And then if you have any gaps, which this one may, but if you have any gaps, you can take a knife or something like that, and well, first of all, you can. That what I meant to say is, if you have any little extra pieces that are sticking off the side, you can scrape that off with a knife. Mm-hmm. And then if you have gaps, you can get a little piping bag with some of your chocolate, and you can just fill in those little holes. Mm-hmm. And I'll do a little bit of that so you can see. But once it's in there, and this is just a little pastry bag made of parchment paper. Okay. You can do, if you have parchment at home, you can also buy disposable bags. You would want a very, very tiny hole in this bag. You can help it. Don't want that to sit up too high. So you can, make sure that's coming out of there. Yeah. So you can come around the edge, like, see, there's just a tiny little bit of a gap, just the tiniest bit. This one actually went together really well. I'm impressed. But you can just come around and just sort of pipe that closed because you don't want any of the material coming out. Like I said, this one came out pretty good. I'm impressed.
It's amazing. It makes it look so easy.
It actually is pretty easy. Another thing that we'll do, I'm going to set this one here. So this one I did with, I did 2 layers, and you can kind of see it's got a little bit of like, brown peeking through. I did 1 layer of red and 1 layer of like a darker chocolate, just out of curiosity to see what happened. So something else you can do, and a lot of people do this when they make hot chocolate bombs, is a little bit of decoration. So you can get some pretty sprinkles and a little bit more of your, you can get the red that you were using, or if you want to get a contrasting color, you can do that and do some zigzags across the top. Mm-hmm. So we're going to do that. I'm going to put a little bit of, I'm going to have to heat that up. I'm going to get a little bit, one with red and one with some dark chocolate. What I'm going to do is just take this little pastry bag, just cut a little bit off of the end, this one with the red, and you can just, got to warm it back up. There you go. Sometimes these things cool so quickly that you have to be fast. So I'm just going to go kind of back and forth on that one. And I'm going to leave that one. I don't think I'm going to put any sprinkles on that one. But the other one, I will do sprinkles. So just soften that a little bit. And, you know, it looks like regular. This is candy melt, although you could use chocolate in the same way. Again, you would have to temper the chocolate, and you don't have to temper this. So I'm going to put just a little bit of this into a pastry bag. Try to keep it as neat as humanly possible. When you start working with anything melted, it tends to get messy really fast. So that's always fun. All right, this one has a little bit of an opening. All right. So this one, I'm going to do the same thing on here, but I'm just going to go one direction. And I'm going to put some sprinkles on it. You don't have to do this. And this particular mold is so pretty. It's faceted. So you really don't have to. But they do look awfully pretty when you know, put some special little goodies on it. So next, what we're going to do is put a little milk in a pot on the stove, and I'll show you what the bomb looks like. Something that's really fun that I included on the recipe for grown-ups that want to have this. You can, especially with the orange 5-spice version, if you add a little shot of Grand Marnier to it, it's really good. It's just very orangey. Something about that chocolate orange combination is so yummy. And then with the 5-spice, it's like, feels very elegant. So
sounds like the perfect Valentine's date for a pandemic situation. We can't go out, so bring it home and make it matter, make it count.
Exactly. And you can just like make it last all day. You know, it's like, oh, I'll have hot chocolate in the morning and I'm not going anywhere and maybe I'm not working. But I think it's on a Sunday this year. Is that right?
Correct. It's on a weekend this year.
Yeah. So it's like, just make this like your mimosa.
I like the way you think. And it's been extra and it's been extra frothy. I mean, it's cold up here. I'm not sure if it's cold down there as well, but it's the perfect cuddle weather. And you know, you make your chocolate bomb, your chocolate heart bomb. The recipe you got from, you know, our Newark Museums of Art's finest, Jennifer Armstrong Hicks. And you know, you get to brag. It's a story you get to brag about while cuddling on the couch under a blanket. You know, since not all places are open, or not all restaurants are open to do the dine-in thing yet. So, you know, a great way to spend a Valentine's Day.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm going to show you one little fun thing too that I did with one of the images I think that we're probably going to post for this, or that we did post. If you want to kind of, you know, add some kind of extra decoration to a plate sometime. Normally this wouldn't be plated, but, you know, if you did want to plate something, it's really cool to make a stencil and use cocoa powder or powdered sugar with your stencil. And so that's what I did. So I just used a piece of cardstock and an X-Acto knife. I just printed out what I wanted to cut out on this paper, and then I cut it out. And this is the characters for Peach. I thought that would be kind of cool with the box that we chose. So right there, I'm just putting it down on top of all this business that's happening. You just want to be careful that you have a spot where you can kind of lift it up carefully. And so I actually just bent the edge of it so I can grab it easier. And then you take your cocoa powder and just really lightly, because cocoa powder, when it comes through a sifter, it really comes out fast. So you don't have to do much. I'm like barely tapping it. And you just kind of tap it around until it looks like it's filled your stencil. And then just super carefully, because again, cocoa powder. And then you have a really pretty image afterwards. So I'll turn that so you can actually read it.
Nice.
And you want to make sure that the milk is nice and hot. It doesn't have to be boiling, but you should kind of get it about scalding because it needs to melt everything that's happening in here. So you just put your little bomb in the cup, which is so cute. And then, okay, fingers crossed that we're hot enough. very steamy. So yeah, you just pour right on top. Let's see if I can do it. And the marshmallows should start to
Oh,
pop out. They
yeah,
are. And
yeah.
it flips over sometimes and it still gives you the little heart, which is really fun. And then you just stir like you would with any hot chocolate. And you can see your like little powder mixture, but if you stir a little bit, that'll mix in and you'll have your little marshmallows. And it's just super fun. Like, and it's cool because you can make them and package them and give them to friends. You can send them in the mail. It's pretty cool little gifty.
I
So
like that idea too of sending it through the mail, especially if you can't get to your Valentines because of the pandemic. A lot of people
exactly.
who are frontline workers may not be able to have that one-on-one time with their significant other, and so
Yep.
you just pack it in a lunchbox, and they can go off to work, and they'll have their lunch break and have their hot cocoa and FaceTime you.
That would be amazing. Yeah, I think every frontline worker deserves hot chocolate bombs, mini hot chocolate bombs, to help them wind down. And yeah, if you can say your appreciation for them, that'd be amazing.
Well, I love, 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 love this cocoa made with love.
Yes, love,
and
love, with love.
and I'm
And
hoping our viewers did too. I'm hoping that they got some really cool tips today that they'll take and bring back to their kitchens. And again, for all of our viewers who are watching, just remember that Art Bites will be back for another episode. So if you enjoyed this and you love this content, we're going to be bringing more and more for you to try more. I should say more and more recipes for you to try at home. So we look forward to that. So Jennifer, thank you for doing this as always. We appreciate you. And I guess until the next Art Bites, we'll see you then.
all right, thanks. It was super fun. Stay warm.